Hello, welcome everybody. Today's video where I'm going to be doing a tier list of all the half sword weapons that I could remember. I could not find any in-game pictures of them, so I just found the closest resemblance I could find them in here. This falchion blade here is closest that I could find to that sword that when you only get higher up and fight that thing's the third boss that has all them blades. He has one that's like normal and then it's like curved down. This is like the closest I could find to that. I don't know what that sword's called, so that'll have to do. But now you know. But anyways, let's start with the beginning weapons. So start with the candlestick that a lot of people like to call a chandelier for some reason. The candlestick, the smaller one, I would probably honestly put it as a B tier, just due to the simple fact that it does a lot of blunt damage to where even if you get up to the higher ranks to where they're knights, 1 to 2 shots to the head can still break their neck. So I would definitely put that at a B tier because it's usable up to the end of the game. It's just a little tricky to micromanage at that point. The larger candlesticks I would put as a D because they are so unwieldy when you swing them. It likes to dip down and get stuck in the ground. And it doesn't do much damage despite the mass. It's like one-sided on heft, so it just doesn't hit as hard as you would think it would. The littler one does more damage. So I have to put that one at D tier. That I would rather it would be more useful to use anything else in the game than that thing. It's just a piece of shit. The stool. The stool I'd put as a C tier. It's better than the other one, but it's something that you want to get rid of. It's not great. It does blunt damage, but I've never really had use of it out past the first boss. And your guy likes to drop it a lot, so not really great in my opinion. The light that you get is also the same tier, same thing pretty much. It's useful, just stubby, not that great. Takes like 5 to 8 hits to kill someone with it, not that useful. The paddle stick. The paddle stick I would also put as a C. It is the longest weapon out of the new weapons that are relatively blunt, but it does so low of damage. It does shit damage. Like it's like shoving a toothpick up someone's ass. It doesn't do anything. It is absolutely useless to a degree. Like I have had times where I've hit someone in the head like 10 plus times and they were still alive and will keep getting up. Not a great weapon. Candlestick's better. Sometimes the larger one does this candlestick does more damage than the paddle, but it just the unwillingness makes it a tier lower. Moving on, I would say the wooden hammer. That would be B tier. It's same with the candlestick. You can use it higher up. Like it is great. And if you're good at throwing, then it can actually one-shot people in the face. I am terrible at that though. I saw a clip of someone doing it once. That's how I know. Um, if you do just slight chops down, it does indeed kill people. I've splattered people's heads that were helmets with just this one simple smackdown with it. I can definitely say it does a lot of damage. I think it's because it's smaller. It counts as 2 hitboxes from the meat of the hammer and the handle itself. So that one's actually pretty damn good, especially for so low down. The wooden axe, as I keep calling it, a dude told me that's actually a shovel. It's supposed to be a wooden shovel, but I would put that as I would honestly put it as C tier because might be longer. I replace it instantly. I've never used it higher up. You guys can tell me down below if you've ever used the wooden shovel higher up in the game or not. I personally have never done it, so I don't know how it does the armor. I know that when people wear the chest plates, the normal chest plates, it doesn't do anything unless you hit with like the very end of the blade. Then it can cut, but it cannot chop limbs off at all. It can't chop body parts off. Not that I know of. So not that great. It's a shit axe basically. It's more blunt axe more than anything else. It's a shovel at the end of the day. So what we're really expecting. Let's see the chisels. There are actually 2 chisels in the game. I learned this today. One less shit than the other. So the really tiny chisel is a D tier. It sucks. It does no cutting damage. It is mostly blunt, and you might as well just punch someone in the face at that point. Anything else is better. I would actually prefer to use the large candlestick over it. That's how bad that weapon is. I don't like that weapon at all. If you hold Alt and click, then you can stab with it. It does actually amazing stab damage. It will actually pierce. I've actually pierced like small armor with it. but because it's so stubby, even when you do stab somebody, it isn't going to do a lot of damage. It isn't good. It's dog shit. Don't use the little chisel. The big chisel, also a D tier. Less of shit though. Like it can cut. I've cut people's necks with it. The whole entire sides of the blade of this chisel, or adze, as that one person said it was actually called, is a blade, but it's a really shit blade. It's a blade that got sharpened once every 3 years, and it occasionally holds up like it used to. Not great. It also stabs, but does a bigger hole. So I've killed the Grim Reaper guy with it. Like if you stab him in the chest and rotate, it actually rips the whole chest cavity out, and it'll instantly kill him. But it's hard to get it to penetrate, and it likes to. You know when you try to stab people in this game, sometimes you like angle the opposite direction of everything than going in the center. It does that most of the time. Not good, but can slip people's throats if you swing it. So if you ain't got a knife, then just pick that up. Speaking of the knife, the starting knife is a C tier. The really big Gordon Ramsay kitchen knife. That's thick. That thing lacerates the shit out of people. You can cut heads off with it. You can do everything. It is a wonderful weapon. Does a ton of pierce damage. Uh, wouldn't say it's great for armor. It also is very stubby, so I would actually prefer, say, some of the later things over it, but we'll get to that when we get to them. Not great at all. It's mostly just there. It exists. Not that bad. I actually would like to use it in higher ups, but it's just so stubby to the point that it becomes irrelevant after the first to second boss, and you're just gonna get your hands chopped off trying to use it. So I give that a C tier. It's better than these. It functions for what it is. Definitely something you're gonna replace after the Grim Reaper. Mgabi, this thing, you guys might have seen this in the game. It's really weird looking. I put that as a D tier. Uh, it cuts people. It doesn't do a lot of cut damage. It is okay. It's a shit scythe, basically, or sickle, not scythe. It's a really shitty sickle. That's all it really is in this game. Uh, you can block with it great. It's actually a wonderful parrying weapon in the game. You can use it up to the end game to parry stuff. But I think, like all of you guys, I don't, unlike me, who tries to go for parries for the videos just to show just it looks cool. I don't really think you guys are going to go for parries. Primarily, I think you're mostly just going to try to whack the person before they can do it. So I don't think anyone uses this higher up to the point that it's just useless. So I don't recommend using it. You still get your fingers cut off even using it. Sometimes, like the great swords, for instance. So not great. Use a shield over it at that point. Don't do it. Just avoid the Ngabi right there. It's not great. What other weapons are at the start of the game? This thing, I'm putting this at a B tier. This is that really stubby axe, that really like the throwing hatchet. It is the smallest axe in the game. It does better cut damage than the knife. It can chop. I've chopped people's hands off instantly with it and gutted them instantly with it. It is actually a pretty good weapon, but it is the smallest weapon in the game that's ablated. It actually has a smaller hitbox than the knife, which says something. The knife, if you actually measure it, is just ever so longer than it, which means you get the cut just before this. Which means I've actually won fights just because of the knife's range over it, fighting people that did have it, and it's okay. It is the best throwing axe in the game. Like if you get your character to have his hand curved, you throw it, it can chop heads off instantly. It is a wonderful throwing axe. That's the only weapon I'm actually good at throwing is this axe. So I recommend playing around with that small hatchet with that reason. It's actually really good. Um, the woodcutter's axe. I'm putting it as A tier. You get this at the start of the game. The woodcutting axe, which you've seen in any of my videos, it one taps people. It will chop heads off. It'll chop legs off. The only axe that does more damage than this axe is the higher up horseman's axe that you get from the third boss of the game. His axe does more damage, but I like this axe's moveset better. That axe there, it's heavy, is its long range slams. This one here is its lights, which if you use the starting axe's heavies, it's the half swording technique where he grabs it and like slams it down so it helps penetrate armor. So the woodsman's axe is by far my favorite axe. I used it primarily through the entirety of the Viking video, the newest Viking video, and it is just a wonderful, wonderful weapon. I completely recommend using it. You can go through the whole game easily with it. Uh, let's see here. The doll axe, the doll starting hatchet, the smaller version of the woodcutter's axe. It's a C tier. Like it cuts, not great. That's where it's duller than the small hatchet. It doesn't really deal a lot of damage in the case unless you hit someone in the neck, but everyone dies by neck shot anyway, which pretty much eradicates its usefulness. It's longer than both of the other hatchet and the knife, but is duller than both of them put together. It's I can't really say anything positive about it. Like mostly it's there. It's there if you can. It's better than the chandelier at least during a certain occasion. Like this one anyway. This one it's not. I actually would rather use this over this axe. That's just how bad it is. I don't really care for it. Let's see. What would be next? I guess yeah, you can get this before the Reaper boss. The regular scythe is honestly gonna be D tier for me. Or sickle, not scythe, pardon. Because it doesn't cut that great. Like if you can hook it around someone's neck and decapitate them, but it takes a lot of effort to do that. It isn't really sharp, and most of the damage is coming from the very tip of the blade, which isn't really like you have other options like the axe, the chandelier, the candlestick. I mean, little axe, the knife, the paddle. You have all these weapons that are honestly arguably better than it. They are longer than it. Like the only weapon that this thing is longer than is this axe. This knife is nearly the same size. So I don't know why you would remove the rest of a blade to replace it with a small circle hook. That isn't really going to cut that well. So don't really see a point of using the sickle. Although the other sickle, the really small hand sickle, is definitely going to be a B tier for me because it eradicates people. It has less of a gap in the blade to where it will just gut people instantaneously. So I can definitely say for how many I've beaten this game like 12 times at this point, and this is definitely one of the top weapons I've used that I just have a very high likeness of using, especially early on. I think we're almost out of the noob weapons. What else is there? Okay, this is the double spear, like the frog spear. That's like a trident with two blades. I couldn't find a metal one for a picture, so here's this. I'm putting it as C tier. It's worse than the spear. Obviously, you get it before the spear. I do like the fact that it stabs in better. It gets puts two wounds. That's advantage over the spear, but it's less of a blade. It doesn't cut as well. It's pretty floppy, and it's okay. It's not great. Not many negatives, not many positives. Now, this weapon here is the pickaxe. That's what this is. It's the pickaxe, but there's also another pickaxe in the game that's like a smaller one. And this to me they're the exact same tier rank. They are both a D rank because the pickaxe, while it does do a lot of damage, if any of you have used it, it gets stuck in people really fast. You have to fight more than one person, you're screwed because if you so much as hit someone in the side of the body with it, it'll get lodged in their abdomen and you have to spend like 5 minutes trying to take it out. The littler one does less damage than it, and it does that as well. To the point that sometimes I've had it stab into people and then it just launches them in the outer space and I couldn't get it back. So I don't really think these weapons are very good. So that's all I have to say about that one. The hoe. The hoe is also a D tier because while it can cut people's feet off very weirdly, it is very small blade. It's probably the smallest hitbox in the game. It has a very small tip. It has to hit very precisely to the point that it's not really relevant in the higher up games because you could rather use a greatsword over. Like, come on, you're gonna use a hoe or a greatsword. Like, come on. So it's okay, not great. Appreciate it works for a noob, but it's not really relevant. After it's barely relevant before the first boss. Let's be honest. Uh, I think we are officially out of the noob area now. Yes, we are. We are officially out of the noobs. Technically, this axe here is also a noob weapon, but it's very rare to spawn, so almost gonna count it as the second boss. So now we're on to the second boss weapons, which the first would be the scythe after you get for killing the first boss, and this is going to be an S tier weapon. The scythe is awesome. If you've used it, you know what I mean. It is great throughout the entire game. Its only thing holding it back is the game's mechanics to where your character is kind of goofy and he'll get his arms and the weapon itself stuck in the ground a lot. When that gets fixed out, though, it'll be this weapon's going to be devastating. Like, its heavies already split people in two instantly. Its lights can do that to multiple people at once. It takes people's legs out, and it has so much range and so much blade to the point that the only thing that really gets in the way is spear users. Spears are your bane with this thing because they'll just hold the spear out, and your weapon's hand will get caught on the blade every time, where they'll cut your hand off or they'll gut you, which makes it pretty annoying. So if you mix the spear with something like, say, the wood axe, where it can knock the spear away and then cut in their neck really quick, then I would say the first A and first S tier weapons go perfect together, but you can't carry them at the same time. So unless you do wield them, which would be kind of weird. So I would say if you're gonna use a scythe, honestly, carry this with you, the little sickles, the B tier sickle, and you'll have a little bit better of a run. Um, let's see who it is next on the tier list. The upgraded axe. So this is the upgraded variant of the standard C tier, and it is literally just one tier above it. It cuts wonderful. Like the only reason I'm putting this as B tier is because it is on par with A or S tier. S tier is weapons that you can go through the whole game with a breeze. Weapons that are so good that you can just use them every run and always win. A tier weapons are weapons like S tier, but you're gonna die more than you would think. They're okay, but they take the time to kill the person, and these tiers are just existing tiers. So this weapon kills people fast, but it's the reason that it's not going to be an A tier, despite it actually being sharper than the Woodsman's axe, is the fact that the huntsman, yeah, this is the huntsman's axe. The huntsman's axe, the hand hatchet, or the tomahawk, whatever you want to call it, is stubby. Let's get this right. It's stubby. Like it's the same length. No, it's not. It's an inch longer than the standard blunt hatchet, but the blade is smaller on it, which means you're not going to hit as much of the body to the point that armor kind of takes it away. Shields make it irrelevant to a most of the higher degree, to where they just hold it up and it'll block your weapon out of the way and they can cut you. So the huntsman's axe here, or the tomahawk, is decent but not great. I'll let you guys uh think where you think that should have been, but I personally think it's a B tier. It's all right, but not something I would. It's like a weapon I would always carry on me unless I found a sword. All right, now that we're on to this one, I can actually put up the spear, since the spear. Yes, the spear spawns after the first boss. It's a rare spawn, and the spear is, and honestly, it's an A tier. The spear is miles above the frog jig spear and or trident. Uh, I've beaten the game with it once, and it destroys people even with armor. You take their knee out, stab them in the neck, take the knee out, stab them in the neck. It is really easy to use, really good. Its job can pierce up to two people if they're not wearing armor, obviously. And it's it's just really good. I've even cut people's arms off with it. It gets lodged in their bone really quickly, but it's easy to rip back out. Unlike the frog jig is once you get both blades stuck in them, sometimes it's hard to get it back out. So the best spear in the game, hands down. It's the second one anyway. So next weapon would be the let's see here. I don't think the dagger spawns yet. No, it doesn't. It spawns after the second boss. So for the second boss's weapons, which unlocks most of the other weapons here, his would be his e-sock or his rapier. And I don't like it. I'm gonna put it as a C tier because it cuts worse than any other sword in the game. It's mostly a stab weapon, but I honestly don't see why anyone, like, you guys tell me down below, I might be wrong on this, but I don't see anyone going through the game and saying, yeah, I want to stab for my primary attack unless I'm using a spear. Because why would you use a sword just to stab people that are wearing plate armor at that point? Because after the second boss is plate armor. So why would you do that yourself? I don't see the point of that sword. It seems pretty useless. It's good for cutting people's wrists off because how it curves, but it takes like 2 or 3 hits to do that. And you could just use the tomahawk, which will do it instantly at that range. So I don't see a reason to keep it. It also gets stuck in you sometimes when you try to store it, so I don't like that weapon at all. Um, After him, all of the weapons get unlocked at this point, except for the boss weapons, obviously. So the next weapon that I would guess I would rate would be the dagger. It is better than the kitchen knife. Uh, I'd say B tier for the dagger because the dagger's all right. That's about it. It's all right. It's less bulky than the kitchen knife, but it's longer. It has better stab. Its cutting's decent. It's actually, I feel like it's less sharp than the kitchen knife. Uh, the kitchen knife is basically a cleaver at this point, though. It's thick as hell. But the dagger's all right. I actually like it better than the kitchen knife, personally. So, I'll let you guys debate about that. The next weapon that I would probably put on here, the next boss is the horseman. The horseman is, yeah, it would be the horseman because it goes the reaper, the noble, the horseman. So the horseman uses obviously the horseman's axe. It's a weapon that people used to use back in medieval era to on horseback to cut people. It's a okay. I put it as a B tier. It's the weapon that I said I was comparing with the woodland axe. The woodland axe, like I said, its lights or swings. That's the heavies for the horseman's axe. This has no grip. Its lights are technically the grip, but they're terrible. I mean, its heavies, pardon. And I don't like that. It's to me, it's just wonky. It doesn't cut as well. He holds it lower on the handle, which makes most of the wood flop around. I don't care for it. It's all right. I said that it's good to use in my how to win video. The first two times I used it, it was great. Every other time I've used it since, it sucks. So it's a pretty fickle weapon. Use it if you like, but I would actually recommend sticking with the woodsman's axe on that one over the horseman's. Uh, let's see here. After you beat him, you unlock all of this right here, except for the great sword and the long mace. So I'll say honestly, the standard sword would be a B tier as well. The standard swords of the game, the short swords or the bastard swords, are yeah. There's two different ones. You have the bastard sword and the short sword. The short sword and the bastard sword I put in the same tier because they're decent, but they're not great. Like they'll cut people, but they're terrible against armor. Obviously, blades are obvious, or swords have never been good against armor. That's what hammers are made for. So you're gonna need to have a backup weapon with it. It can cut through the cracks. Like the sword is really good at cutting through the cracks of the neck to get to the neck and the joints, but it doesn't do a lot past that. If you're fighting unarmored people, it's actually decent. If you're fighting plate people, then it's okay. Like it's mostly just a spark and it looks cool, but they're not super effective. Let's see here. The war pick. The war pick. See, this is a hard one for me. The war pick it goes through armor great, but it's weird. Like, is it something that I would put it as a B tier? I was thinking about A, but it penetrates the armor in the game. The war pick's okay. I've only used it once, and I only killed three people with it, so I couldn't really say that I have a lot of experience with the war pick because I usually have weapons that are just longer than it and honestly better than it. So it's the same thing as the sword. It's okay. It's just a little more effective than the sword. On to the executioner, which is the guy that has all the swords on him. His weapon goes straight to A. So he uses executioner blades, which an executioner blade is squared off at the end. There is no point; it's just squared off, and it was designed mostly just for chopping. So it usually cut people's heads off. Obviously, it's okay. You can stab with it, but it's not really sharp at the end. Um, It's great in this game. It is miles above the normal sword because it actually cuts through armor. I don't know why. In this game, I've had it cut through people's armor. Like I've cut plate people in half nearly with this thing. Like it gets like halfway through them and they just bleed out. Like you can gut people with it wearing armor, and it is phenomenal. And I honestly think that it's something that you guys should start using. Now, I will say the other sword he has, which is this one right here, is between C and B. I'm actually going to say it's a C tier. This might piss people off, but it's to me it's a C tier because his other sword is like his executioner sword, but it has a really weird like circle cut out of the end of it, and it isn't great. It's not great. Like you can stab people with it. It's mostly a weird needle at the end, and its chops are all right, but not something that are phenomenal. Uh, I'd say it's about the same usefulness as the rapier. Maybe if they gave it to you before him, it would be good. But because it usually spawns on him and it's very rare to see before him, it's not really something I'd use. Because why would you use the inferior blade over the boss's swords that are just longer than it and sharper than it? Why would you ever do that? And another thing about the executioner's blade, the why it's an A tier, is because while it might be it's the longest sword in the game that you can use one-handed without it flopping. You can take like say the long swords and you can dual wield them, yeah, but they dip down. Executioner's blade don't. They're light enough to where they don't. So it's the longest sword in the game that you can freely swing around like you could a hatchet. Like if you can swing around like say two knives really fast, it's the same moveset with the Executioner's blade. They're just way bigger. That's why they're so good. And he drops two of them. So cheers for that. The next weapons would be I guess I might as well put the longsword as a next. The longsword is yeah, the longsword's an A tier. The longsword, it's great. It cuts through stuff. It's not as large as the greatsword or claymore, obviously. It's a longsword. It's not gonna be. But it does have damage and heft to it, and it's fast enough to actually be easily angled to where you can two-hand it or you can one-hand it, but two-handing it's preferable. And if you mix it with a great shield, which you're gonna have after the executioner, it's gonna be it's just an all-around good weapon you can beat the game with. It's just a shame you don't get it till near the end of the game. But yeah, that's about it for that long sword. I don't have any negatives for it. I've never tried stabbing with it because, like I said, I don't stab people that are wearing armor because I don't see the point. Um, the next weapon would be the long hammer. And the long hammer, I'm honestly gonna say it's a D tier because the long hammer is all right, but not great. Like this is, I don't know why I'm calling it a long hammer. This is that really small like hammer that you get. It's one-handed. I call it a long hammer because it's what it looks like, but it's not great. It breaks armor. It can kill people. The reason it's D tier is because it's worse than a mace, and it's smaller than a mace. So it's a smaller hitbox. It has less weight behind it. It's less hefty. It doesn't knock people back as far. It doesn't do as much damage. I don't know why you'd want to use it at all at this point in the game. It'd be great for level 2. If it spawned in the level 2 area for the noble, then it would be great because it's best for the the regular shirts and the small helms. It's great for that. But people that are wearing really heavy plate armor with full-on masks, it doesn't do shit too. You need a mace for that. And we'll get to the maces in a moment. Uh the halberd or the pole axe or the long axe or whatever you want to call it. I call it a halberd. Uh it's also D tier. It is the worst weapon in the game that I've ever used. That's a high up. It is honestly it's the exact same usefulness to me as the large candlesticks. It is unwieldy. It gets stuck on everything. The axe blade doesn't cut well. The hammer part doesn't really do shit. It doesn't stab good. There's literally nothing positive about the halberd in this game at all, unless you just want a really big confluffle that's going to get stuck on everything, get fall on the ground, and your guy also likes to have it get stuck behind him. I've never had a good experience with it. I've tried it multiple times. It's been shit every single time. I absolutely hate the halberd or poleaxe in this game. For Honors is better. This game's it's dog shit. Don't use it unless you have a masochistus fetish. Masochistus fetish. Um, Let's see. The next axe I guess I should do is let's see here. Huh. I guess I should do the maces now. So the spiked mace, A tier. Spiked mace, it does blunt damage, it knocks people's helmets off, it kills them pretty fast. It's all right. It works. Um, Not much else. It's simple, effective, good. It deals a ton of blunt damage. It'll kill people with helmets, breaks through most armor, knocks a lot of people over, can shatter their knees. Really good. It's honestly to me the spiked one is the best hammer in the game or a mace. The more flaily one is a B tier. It has blades, mostly blunt. It's okay. It's a little longer, weighs a little bit more. It's a little slower. It's okay. It's not great. I would honestly say if you're gonna use it, you might want to use the war pick over it because it cuts through armor better. Just saying. It's not bad. It's all right. It's okay. I can't remember what axe this is. Oh, I remember what axe this is now. This is the long axe. This is the oh shit, what was it? I don't know if you guys remember, like when you get high up, there's another axe. It's a little bit longer than the other one. It's kind of like the tomahawk, but it's not the tomahawk. It's the same rank as the tomahawk, so I'm putting it. It works. It's okay. It's literally just a longer tomahawk. Let's see here. Now, on to the next boss is the last three weapons. Last boss of the game is obviously Doppelganger yourself, so he's not going to count. So the second to last boss, the Prince or the big heavy dude, uses a claymore. This is going to be honestly, yeah, it's going to be an S tier. His greatsword does a shit ton of damage, man. It just does a lot. It does the most damage of any sword in the game. It's the heaviest. It's clunky at times, but when it does work, it does wonderfully. Scythe is better than it. Just because it cuts through armor better. Uh, you have more range than anybody else in the game that's using a sword by a good 4 inches. It's stab. I've actually have done it. It's pretty good. It goes through necks quickly. You can take off more than one person's head in one swing. Does great for wrists. It is actually an upgrade for the wood axe. At that point, it's better than the wood axe. It does everything the wood axe does, but with more range. It's just that good. It's awesome. Now the long club. That's what I'm gonna call this. There's a stick. It's a stick that's like 6 feet with a spiky head at the end. That's all it is. It's a C tier. It works. It does what it's meant to do. It doesn't do it well. Reminds me of a footman's flail, but it doesn't have a chain at the end. It's not great. Any measure or word, it will kill your opponents. It will do its job. It does what it's supposed to, but like I said, in a really shit way. I don't really see it ever being used. Um, I like it just because I find it funny. It knocks people over pretty quickly, and you can hit them in the balls, but you'll be beating them for a while. Not great. Not great at all. Now, the ball mace is a B tier. Last weapon in the game. Uh, you can find this after you beat the yeah, after you beat the executioner. You can find this, and it's a mace. It's just a club. It's a Persian mace. It's stick with a ball. It's all right. I don't really like it for the fact like I'd use any of the other ones over it, just for the fact that it's pure blunt damage. It does shatter people's head really, really quickly. But my problem with it is the fact that it doesn't send people far as back. Like the spiked mace sends people farther than this thing does. Plus, the spiked mace does the same damage nearly. It does ever so slightly less blunt damage, but you have cutting damage along with it to the point that it's just better. I actually might use it over the other one though, the flagged mace, because I don't really like the flagged mace. I'm just gonna be honest, I don't really care for it. But yeah, I'd say it's okay. But yeah, that would be the tier list for this game for weapons. I was gonna do armors along with them, but I don't really see a point because the helmets are all nearly the same. The best helmet in the game is the crow helmet that has that covers the back of your neck. But like all the armors in the game are pretty much identical, with them having just one tier above it that are obviously always better. So there's no real point if there's not going to be very many armors in the game. But yeah, that would be all the weapons in the game that I can remember. If I missed any, feel free to tell me down below, and I'll probably just tell you what tier I'd say it would be. But yeah, let me know if you guys disagree with any of these. I think it's pretty accurate for most of them, but just my own opinion. Uh, until then, I'll see you next time. My name's Shiftface Gaming. Cheers.